joining us this evening. Very good to see you. I'm just going to continue my conversation here, and then I'll come to you and we can have a bit of a chat about the case as well, give you a chance to settle down. But I just don't want to miss the chance of continuing the point that Stella was making about the mainstream media with you, Clara, because I think we all understand the biases that exist in the mainstream media, but it's one thing to recognise the bias, it's another thing to think that is 100%, and that you could never get a good story, or there's never a good journalist, or that there's never going to be a moment where you can't influence some of the press to do the right thing. And I think we have to separate those two things in our mind. And I think it's interesting what you said about the film itself being shown on the public service broadcaster in 2 European countries. Now, if the mainstream media were as monolithic as some people seem to think it is, that should never have happened. But it did. So do you want to just tell us a bit about that? Because that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's incredible that it was like that. We had this person in the German television who stand from the beginning for the film, and yeah, it was like that. So it was screened in the German television several times, and it was online 1 year for free in the Mediathek, and well, yeah. So I just want to do something, to say something about just to think together with you, because it's really revolutionary what Wikileaks and Julian thought about journalism is that you don't have, when you are a journalist, you don't write opinions. You just show the documents. You just show them as they are, and it's really revolutionary because much more and more and more and more there are like there are official stories that are told through the media, and this is really revolutionary that you just want to know about something, about Ukrainian war or about Syrian war or about another issue, and you just look at the documents. So this makes possible to make a journalist of all of you without having to read like a summary with an opinion about something. Of course, it's easy, because we don't have time to research about everything that happens in the world. But it's something great about this idea. And it's crazy that this idea is being punished, because it's something very simple, just to show the documents. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks. Selma, I want to give you a chance to say something really, because there's a kind of special moment in the campaign at the moment where the case isn't before the court at the moment. And all the time that it has been before the court, I know that parliamentarians, as well as the rest of us, are always told, oh, you can't ask questions in Parliament, you can't say this because the case is sub judice. But it's not sub judice now. So there's a kind of special moment, isn't there, for parliamentarians to be able to challenge Priti Patel and to raise the question of the extradition treaty.
Absolutely, and firstly I just want to say congratulations to Clara for making this film, because I think bringing out the story as it should be understood and heard is so important, and just incredible courage and determination from Stella as well. And I think particularly last week, I've not been able to come to every single demonstration, but it's just, hasn't she been just amazing, the courage and determination to keep fighting. I think it's just astounding, and it's just so inspiring as well. And then just on your point, I think absolutely, I think throughout the campaign and as it has been developing, quite rightly so, people have been asking, well, what are politicians doing, what are people in power doing? And in some ways we have had our hands tied by archaic parliamentary restrictions and processes and procedures. But of course, when a case is going through the courts, we, generally speaking in the public domain, we have to be very careful about what we say to allow for the case to be heard in the courts. And so there were particular moments where we really wanted, a few of us in Parliament really wanted to table motions, put pressure on the government, because we knew from very, very early on, when this case first began, that this is a political attack, this is a political case. And therefore, it needed a political fight back, and it needed a response accordingly. And when we tried to engage with the parliamentary structures, and just a little bit before then, I think it's, there were many attempts for MPs to try and meet Julian in prison, and that was rejected on many occasions. I think to date, I think it's just one member of Parliament, John McDonnell, that was eventually, after many attempts, allowed to visit him in prison. And then that was it. And I think when we went into the lockdown, there was absolutely, of course, no access, even pretty much to family. And then we made another attempt to reach out to the governor of the prison directly to actually meet Julian and say, we're a group of MPs, we want to hear from him directly. And that was refused as well. But a few of us from the Socialist Campaign group of MPs did go outside of the prison just to try and deliver the letter again to the governor, just to apply that little bit more pressure as well. But in terms of, as you say, the parliamentary processes, it has been quite restricted. There were times we were trying to sort of lay down motions, but because it was being taken through the courts, we were told that it can't be tabled. So now there is a small window of opportunity where we have been able to put down a motion, and that's been led by Richard Bergen MP for Leeds East, and that has garnered some support. It's not a huge number, but it's definitely going to be something that is looked at, and certainly civil servants and people in the government will be looking at that motion and know that there is a level of pressure that is continuing on this case. And it goes back to what has been said. Now in the way in which, it's down to people like John and the campaign that has continued to develop. I think the campaign's come a really long way forward. In the early stages, people were still talking about the Swedish case, and you couldn't get away from the stigma associated with that at so many levels. Whether that was approaching politicians, whether it was approaching different campaign groups, trying to bring different parts of grassroots movements together. People were always talking about, can't associate myself with that, or there's question marks over there. And what has happened since is a growing campaign, a developing campaign, which has really talked about the issue at hand. And this case very much has become about human rights. We're talking about a human being who has been put in the highest maximum security prison, on remand prisoner, with no real charges placed against them in the UK jurisdiction. And I think that is really shocking. We can come back to that fact. And now the decision lays with the Home Secretary. So it's going to be very much a political decision. So it's a political case, it always has been. And now all the political pressure needs to continue to be put on the Home Secretary to make the right decision.
I know some of the Assange supporters are planning an action coming up in June. I'm going to come to Jeannie in the audience in a moment or two just to say something about that. But Stella, before I do that, looking forward now in terms of campaigning, I want to end the evening with an idea about what ordinary people can do about the Assange case. What are the most important milestones coming up, do you think?
I always, I don't like being too dependent on the legal calendar, because those are dates that we can't anticipate, they're prone to change, and it basically, those dates become important anyway, but just organizing around campaigning should be done kind of on our own dates and our own terms. I find Julian's 51st birthday will be on the 3rd of July. It will be his 4th birthday in Belmarsh prison. Dates like World Press Freedom Day was a very good day to kind of hook Julian's case to the broader issues. I find that there's a danger, partly because the case has been complex and it's been over a decade of developments. People tend to think of it as some kind of sui generis thing, but actually Julian's case is everything but that. The implications are enormous in many different directions, press freedom being one. But even if you look at just the court case and the implications of the political offence, for example, that the UK courts seem prepared to allow people to be extradited for political offences. That's the position at the moment, and if the courts find in favour of extradition on the appeals, that will be a binding law. The implications for refugees and people living in exile in the UK are huge. It opens up the UK and other countries to other governments doing the same, to applying the same logic as the US is in this case, to persecute their critics abroad, their critical journalists or people who are just critical journalists in foreign jurisdictions. It's completely insane. So sorry, going back to the campaigning. Yes, Don't Extradite Assange.com has a mailing list. Please sign up to that. Keeps everyone up to date. It also has a very handy, if you're writing to people, handy tab of statements where it compiles statements, for example, from the Council of Europe, from the UN, from Human Rights Watch and Reporters Without Borders, and all the subject experts. You don't have to know the details of this case, because I don't expect any person who hasn't been living it for the last 10 years to know all the details, but there are subject experts who have analyzed the case in detail and have all the arguments and the analysis all laid out, and the way to appeal to politicians and to, for example, journalists that should be saying something and haven't yet, is to appeal to authority, as in authority from these subject experts, United Nations, Committee to Protect Journalists, and so on, who are all, very, very clear, Amnesty International, that this case has to be dropped and Julian has to be freed. Follow me on Twitter. Just stay informed and talk to people. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your networks whenever you can. And there's a lot of information on that website. There's also a show reel of documentaries and clips of Julian speaking. So important for people. You saw him in the front. To hear Julian's own voice, because there's been such an attempt to mediate and to stop his voice from coming out. He's been completely silenced. He's been silenced from a year before he got arrested. Ecuador gagged him and said he couldn't make any public statements because if he did, he would be expelled from the Ecuadorian embassy. This was March, I believe, 2018. That's when he was last heard. And since then, there's been a progressive effort to bury him and to make him, to kill him from public consciousness. So please just find these clips, listen to him, listen, you can just tell what kind of person he is by hearing him speak. He's thoughtful, he's caring, he's analytical, he's brilliant, and they're trying to kill him.
Clara,